Greetings, beautiful people. My name is Simon Javan Okelo, and I am here with another episode of the Madaraka Festival podcast. We are recording inside the Seattle Drum School in Georgetown, which is south of downtown Seattle, for those who don't live around here. And right now, I'm really privileged to be with my incredible brother. Efrem is the CEO of Boon Boona. That is a brand, a coffee brand that is really taking over the coffee scene in Seattle and hopefully in the world soon. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Brother Simon. I'm good, man. I'm so grateful to be here with you and your listeners and just get to spend time catching up.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Of
Thank you
course.
so much.
Yeah.
Man, before we met for our conversation today,
Yeah.
I really want to be holding Boon Boona Coffee so that I can show it off. But now that I have your attention, I feel like I have your brand, and a lot of people, when they see you working hard. They walk into your spaces, they consume the product. They really don't know the story behind it. And I feel that you're doing a great job on social media, just sharing the story of what's going on currently. But I feel that today I want us to go back a little further, to maybe your childhood,
Sure.
what is it that you want to share with us about your upbringing that really inspires who you are today as a businessman, as an entrepreneur? Share with us maybe one story or a story of one person that really continues to inspire you to do what you're doing.
Even with that question alone, you get me excited to be able to share, because it is something that is definitely very meaningful to me, and it is the essence and kind of the starting blocks of who I became and what, how Boon Boona even came to be. But I'd say that it started really with my family. So I came here when I was 5. And I can just step back a little bit. So my family primarily are from Eritrea, and so as the war was intensifying in 75, 76 with Ethiopia, my at that time, I wasn't born at the time, but my dad and my mom and my 2 older siblings left Eritrea and went to Saudi Arabia, Sudan, and then Saudi Arabia, which was the path for a lot of people at the time. So we lived in Saudi Arabia for 10 years, and I was born the 5th year there in Saudi Arabia. And then we moved to Seattle. And, my parents were really big on, like, in this house, you're going to speak Tigrinya. You're gonna speak Tigrinya. If I hear you speaking English, you're in trouble, Outside of this house, you can, all that's welcome. And, we grew up where it was very much communal inside the house, where, like, you always had, at the time, so many people were just immigrating here. So, we always had an aunt, an uncle, a cousin, somebody living with us. And so our house was like a community center, felt
Right.
like. And so you were always around, it almost felt like, in a weird way, like you're in the village, basically.
Right.
And so, of course, you're eating the food, you're talking, you're doing all this stuff. And so, as soon as you walk outside the house, you're in White Center, you're in West Seattle, which are
Right.
neighborhoods where I grew up. And so, kind of that instilled in me pretty early. And, as any child, you're rebellious against your parents. You're like, I don't want to speak it. Or, they take you, on Saturdays, we used to have a school where we would learn the alphabet in Ge'ez, and so we learn how to write it, and I was the worst at it.
Yeah.
I was so bad at it, and it was things that as just your parents are also like, or my parents were sharing with me kind of like this love for back home. They were telling me, growing up in the village and how it was like, from my dad and my mom, and so there was always this like, kind of a mystique. It was this fantasy of this beautiful place that, you gotta go. And as a kid growing up here, you're like, man, this sounds like Disneyland or something like that. I gotta go back to the village.
Yeah.
But, it was growing in me, this kind of dream of it. And I didn't get to see it until I was about 17, 18 years old. throughout that time, it was growing in me. So that's where a lot of it started from, was in my house. And we grew up with the traditional coffee ceremony that is no different from most Ethiopians and Eritreans. Like, you grow up with like the whole traditional side of roasting, grinding, and brewing your own coffee in a jebana. It happens for the most part in mostly all households. In the diaspora, of course, it happens back home, but in the diaspora, it always happens. And so it's how we would, get together. It could be a sad time, we're mourning the loss of a family member or something. We're having the coffee ceremony. It could be the time, like, a child is being born, or it's like a wedding or something, just a holiday. Coffee is being made. And so you always remember these times around the coffee ceremony where you're gathering as a family. And so, I had those things too. And so, I left for college and got into university here, Washington State, and got my bachelor's degree. And, afterwards, I was ready to get in and start working, but my desires and things were, I was starting to read a little bit more. I was trying to awaken a little bit more. So, Malcolm X was definitely a big influence for me in my college years, especially as I was starting to kind of wake up and become a little bit more aware of things in society. I went from, my degree was primarily in business, but I started taking sociology classes because I wanted to understand, things going on a little bit more. And so I began really reading and digesting information about where I'm at. And so when I came out of school, I was like, okay, I want to work for like DSHS, Department of Social Health and Services, try, working within, kind of the agency to provide support in the community and things like that is where my mind was at. And so, I kind of looked at it and I was like, okay, well, I also got a lot of school debt. So let me take care of my responsibilities too. And so I went into like kind of corporate finance basically. And that's kind of where my day job or career kind of started. A lot of it though, and especially at that time, there was a divergence. There was two things going on. One was this like, wanting to get back to my roots and understand my history. Another one was kind of like, okay, I'm in the corporate space. I need to, make money, and I need to pay back my school debt and, try starting up a life and things like that. So there was two things kind of fighting against each other. And of course, we know about code switching and other things that you got to do in the American corporate space. And so a lot of those things were combating each other. And that's a lot of, kind of like where things kind of started bubbling for me.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, man. And they're still bubbling now in all the coffee cups that people drink.
That's a good way of bringing it back. Yeah, that's facts.
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. And, a lot of people don't end up choosing the path you chose. I think you chose a very unlikely path for many African immigrants. If you look at business owners in Washington State, in the diaspora in general, even outside the U.S., you don't find a lot of us running their own businesses. A lot of us are employed. And we are employed also even in jobs that we really don't want,
Yeah.
But in Africa, majority of people are self-employed,
Yeah.
You find that governments are the biggest employers. These days, you get tech companies or cell phone companies that are also becoming big employers, but the highest number of people are self-employed, and they create their own products, whether it's for their farm produce. Of course, they don't process it to the level where there is more value so that they sell it for the prices that the products are worth.
Right.
But, you chose for me, I feel that we need more business people in our community. We need more entrepreneurs taking risks and then employing our people, creating more job opportunities for our people. I just feel that you spoke to how the ideas of Boon Boona were bubbling, and as an immigrant myself, my parents were never with me in the U.S. I came here when I was like 26, I came to the U.S. because of my girlfriend. But the first time I ever came to the U.S. was for work. And I visited 8 different states. I was the field director for Africa for a big NGO. We were building schools, hospitals across Africa. So I was sent to the U.S. to come and do a fundraising tour for all these projects in Ghana, South Sudan, Kenya, Malawi. So my wife at the time was partnering with me to do a project in Ghana where we were building a HIV clinic. But she was from Seattle, and she had just graduated from Seattle U as a nursing student there. So a lot of Seattle U professors, students were very involved with the project we were doing because of her.
Yeah.
And then she grew up on Massa Island, so a lot of her community on Massa Island were also involved with the project that we were doing. So when I came to Seattle, she was hosting me because we were working remotely together until when we met we met in Africa before I visited her here. And we spent 6 months together every day, you know, in Africa before I came and visited her here. So even though we were working together, we kind of started dating, you know, before I came here. So I came to actually see her family and take our relationship to the next level, you know. So she's a wonderful human being and one of my biggest support systems. But when I came here at that time, she knew, and I also knew that I from when I was 8 years old, I was already hustling. I was helping my mother distribute milk and bread in our neighborhood. So I was earning commission from it.
There you go.
And she hired a lot of other teenagers and also adults, you know. She was the biggest milk and bread distributor in our neighborhood.
Wow, okay.
So my hustle today came from that, you know, similar to you, you know. But when I came here, that was not an option, you know. You have to find something to do, you know. You have to get money immediately, you know. So that's part of why I was saying you chose an unusual path, you know. And I just wanted you to speak to the courage of saying that, okay, even though this is hard, you know, this is the path I'm going to take.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll be honest that, you know, at the time, you know, there was always this desire to, you know, be authentically myself. And I know it's, you know, it's commonly said, you know, be you. But I really knew that I couldn't stay doing the thing that I was doing for too long. It was, I felt this like burden, this weight on myself. And I knew I'm going to have to you got one life, you know, make it impactful, make it good, you know. And I know that comes from a place of privilege, you know, a place of like, you know, getting to go to school here, getting to work here, and you know that's an opportunity a lot of, you know, our brothers and sisters, you know, don't get, you know. And you know, there's definitely a lot of realizing that I did on my journeys as well. And I got to basically, and I'll get to that, but in 2008 the financial crisis started. And so I was still working in finance. I was only a few years into it, but I was pretty much like getting burnt out. And 2008 to 2010 were really hard years in the U.S. for a lot of reasons. So there was a lot of layoffs, and so I was fortunate enough to keep my job working, but I was working really hard. And by 2010, I got burnt out. And I knew I was going to take a trip. I'm going to take time off. I'm leaving here. And so I had a plan to go to like Egypt, to Ethiopia, to Eritrea, and just like kind of just do a backpacking trip, and not have really a goal either, just to go there.
Take a real break.
Take a real break.
Yeah.
A real break. And then maybe in that, like, I can maybe find some inspiration for what it is that I could do, you know, what I want to do.
Right.
And so I set off on the trip, and right at that time, the revolution was starting in Egypt, you know, and so and so that was December 2010, and so my ticket was already cut, and so I was like, I think I may need to just shift it. I'll come back to Egypt, you know, and so I was like, all right, let me go somewhere else, and so I made it to Eritrea, and I spent about 3 months of the time in Eritrea, and in that time there, like, you know, I really, you know, started to see things, you know, and so, you know, I'm going to take a little bit back. Before I even made it to Eritrea, I had some family that, you know, my uncle was a monk in Israel. And so he was very old, and I wanted to see him before, you know, anything happened. And so I went to go visit him, and he's, you know, just a really good human being, and I've gotten, you know, a lot of inspiration and wisdom from him. And he had lived kind of in a monastic life for 50 years. And so, you know, he's just kind of like this wise man to me. And so I wanted to see him, spend a little bit of time with him. When I was there, I met a lot of Eritreans, Ethiopians, and Sudanese that had just arrived for the most part. And they had started working, and they were working like, hard labor jobs basically. And the money that they made there, they would send it back home, back to Ethiopia, back to Sudan, back to Eritrea and such. And a lot of them would, I'd talk to someone and they'd be like, man, I just want to make it to the U.S. I'd be like, yeah, no, I understand, for the opportunity and such. Kind of going back to realizing my privilege and how fortunate I was. And so seeing them and hearing their story, right? Because their story was that they left Sudan. They went up, and into the Sinai Peninsula, famine, lack of water, really struggled to make it there. And so you hear about this hardship and you're like, they're the same age as me, younger than me. And you hear about their hardships. It's like, okay, yeah, realize how good you got it, brother. And then I went to Eritrea, where I was there for 3 months, and similar, you hang out there with your family, your cousins, they're your age, younger, older, and they're talking about like, man, if I could make it to Israel, or if I could make it to Colombia, if I could make it to the U.S., or man, I'm gonna go across the Sahara Desert and make it to Libya. And you hear about these, and you hear about the death, you hear about the drownings, you hear about the struggles of our brothers and sisters, and it's impactful. And you're thinking about like, man, like, bro, like, you better get your ass to work, man.
Yeah.
And I think on that trip, in addition to, like I found coffee on it, there was a lot of realizing like, get to work, bro. Like, you have no excuses. If they were in your position, they would have had not only like they'd have 1,000 Boon Boonas. They would have, reached higher levels, because I know that I'm not the most talented or, the most intelligent, but I know that a lot of them are. And it's just about, where you're at and where you're at the time. And so there was a lot of reality, I think, and so I really learned a lot. And I didn't want it to just be for nothing. And so at the same time, though, right, when I'm there, I'm seeing this kind of, Eritrea was colonized by Italy for 50 years.
Right.
And so there's a lot of remnants of that. So cafes, espresso bars, and bakeries and such, and Art Deco and all this stuff. And so I see it, and I'm like going into the cafes, and like the smell, the experience is much different than, growing up here. I'm from here, so I'm from Seattle. I've been here for a long time, so I knew the big dogs that are here. Not to give them any shout outs or anything, but like there's obviously a big player here in Seattle, and Seattle's known for coffee, but you don't see that kind of experience here. And so I wanted to kind of bring some of that here. So I was like, okay, like, what would be the opportunity if you were to do coffee a little different and, have more intentionality behind it? Well, I was like, all right, first thing, I'm only buying my coffee from Africa. I'm gonna find producers, and I'm gonna buy it directly from them, or I'm gonna buy it like in collaboration with them, and bring that that's all I'm gonna use basically. That's gonna be my only coffee. I'm not gonna go anywhere else. And not that like the rest of the world doesn't have great coffee, they do. But I wanted to just have commerce between Africa and where I'm at now. It's like I wanted to be able to, it's a very selfish thing, and so I wanted to see that impact. I wanted to see that relationship. So that's where it all kind of started from. And so it was the founding of it. And then I come back to the U.S., to Seattle after this trip, and it was probably about a total of like 6 months. And this is now, closer to like August of 2011. And for 2 months, all I did was like work on a business plan, kind of how I wanted to go about it, a financial plan. And I just sat on it, just like kept thinking about how I wanted to do it. And by the end of the year, so now like December or so, I'm like starting to pitch it to like some banks, because remember, I'm super broke. I've been backpacking, around, and I ain't got no money. So and the banks are like, no way. And the response that I typically got from the banks was like, like, how are you going to compete with like Starbucks? How are you going to compete with these others? And my approach was like, it's not what I want to do. It's not what I'm thinking about. I want to do it differently. And just be straight up. Like, I mean, a lot of them are white bankers, and so they're not really interested in the cultural importance of Africa or the birthplace of coffee being Ethiopia or the word coffee coming from the region called Kaffa in Ethiopia. They don't want to hear all that necessarily. They want to know, okay, what's my return on investment going to be, and that's it. So I said, forget it, I'm going to go it different. And so by March of 2012, so about 3 months later, I incorporate and get the business started, and I start reaching out to family in Ethiopia. So we have family there, so I'm like, hey, where do you guys get coffee from? And they're like, oh, reach out to this person and that and this and that. And then I started bringing in small amounts. And I just started playing with coffee at home, in Seattle. And so for, about a year and a half, all I did was just play with coffee at home. And that's kind of like how it all started, to just at least the fundamentals of it coming together. But, that it was kind of a twofold thing, that I kind of saw, and that kind of inspired me to get into it a little deeper.
Man, I love it. You're also a good storyteller. So
I appreciate it.
I think, do you drink coffee? You drink coffee, right?
All day, every day. Yeah.
So if you're a good coffee drinker, you must be a good storyteller, because coffee goes with stories.
Man, I mean, if you think about it, when you're sitting around coffee, you're supposed to, it's a conversation.
Right.
So, there's a lot of times where you're listening to elders tell you stories.
Right.
And the one challenge I have is just absorbing as much as possible from the elders. Is like, tell me, when they're telling stories. But over coffee, a lot is done.
Right.
Over coffee, a lot is done. And so, I'm fortunate to be able to do something where, I can. And I don't like to talk as much.
Yeah.
I like to absorb. But when I get an opportunity to share, I love sharing. And if it helps anybody, I'm grateful for that.
I feel like you're still playing with coffee, though.
Oh, for sure.
Because I feel like you're still discovering many ways of giving people coffee experiences, and also many ways of I feel like coffee is still being discovered.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I want to take a few steps back.
Yeah.
So, you come back to Seattle and you realize that let me register the company, let me experiment, but then speak to the moment where now you start visualizing your first Boon Boona, where you haven't built it.
Yeah.
For me, I come from event production. Madaraka Festival is really what I'm focusing on now. By the way, let me speak to the viewers.
Yeah.
If you're joining us for this conversation, my name is Simon Javan Okelo. I am hosting the Madaraka Festival podcast, and I'm so deeply engaged in this conversation. For a moment, I was even forgetting that we are on camera. So if you haven't subscribed to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And if you want to learn more about Boon Boona Coffee, I'm hosting their CEO. We'll add their information in the description down below so that you can visit, go and support, go and enjoy some of their coffee. And at the end, we are going to give you 3 tips about your events, how you can ensure your events are successful. That's really one of the values that I love giving my listeners and my viewers. So coming from an event production space, I always visualize how everything is going to look like at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I reverse engineer what an event is going to look like a year before it happens, 2 years before it happens, and so I'm imagining that now in your house or in the kitchen where you're experimenting with coffee, it got to a moment where you're like, okay, now I need to actually take this to the community,
Yeah.
Share with us that moment, and then actually take us to a journey of the day you walked into the space, and how you implemented this vision, and how your first space looks like at the moment.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. I mean, honestly, as soon as I was working on that financial plan, that business plan, like I was starting to imagine it, and I would actually, as I'm writing it, I would go and check out different commercial real estate spots that were available, vacant, and I would actually imagine me using that space. Not that any of those were like the ones that I ended up using, but it allowed me to like just start imagining what it could become. And in a ways, it's what you're playing inside of your heart with. You're like, man, that would be incredible. That's what I want to see come to life. But at the same time, if folks are like, man, you crazy, man. What are you talking about? You trying to
I
open
know, I
What are you
know.
trying to do? Like, and that's, I get it. I mean, it's definitely difficult to have a dream and try saying, this is going to be a reality to someone. It takes, it's so much work, right, to get to that place, to manifest something. But if you're willing to take that ride, then you will get there. And honestly, from the time that I started working on it after my trip, is when I started to kind of envision it, and all the layers and things that I wanted it to have and to be a part of. And even ridiculously to say, like, some of the goals I wanted to aspire. So, like getting rated as, like, one of the top coffees or coffee roasters or cafes, or, having, some media attention or something like that. Like, you kind of play with those ideas then in your mind, and I wrote them out in that paper, honestly, which is another thing. I think that writing it out and just kind of, seeing it on paper is a great thing. So really from then, the problem was I didn't have the money. So,
Right, right.
there's a reality to it. And so I got back to finance, and I was just working my day job, and
So you actually went back.
oh yeah.
Oh, wow.
There was the hard truth to it, right? It was
Yeah.
this, you can, I was like, hey, I can dream, I can aspire to have this goal, but I also need to live in, like, reality too, of, like, I need to be able to, like, pay for my bills, pay for, still paying off my school, or, to save up even for it. Because I don't have a rich uncle or rich dad, like, I don't come from money to be able to say, oh, hey, fund me, which is, it's a reality for most of us, right?
Right.
So then, okay, well, all right, then let's go. Let's put it to work. So I got back to my day job, and on the weekends, I started doing more of the coffee. And I said, okay, like, I'm playing with it. And by a year and a half, basically, I had this idea of, like, I know the general, like, East African community doesn't have access to green coffee who are roasting at home. So those that do the traditional ceremony don't have access to green coffee, quality green coffee. Let me focus in on my community first. So that's what I did. I put it into I packaged it. I got coffee, I packaged it, and I started putting it into mom and pop stores throughout the Seattle area, specifically in kind of like the SeaTac Taquilla area. So Tawak Al Tabarak, these are Somali-owned grocery stores that the community really knows. We go there for our spices, we go there for our meat. It's definitely like the places. And then even in the central district of Seattle. So I was putting my green coffee inside there, and over time, people started to say, oh, okay, like, I like this coffee, like, this is better quality, it's more consistent. Because most of the time it was just sold in, like, Ziploc bags, and it just have the price on it. And so you never knew where it came from. You didn't know it came from Ethiopia, from Kenya, where. So I was like, well, let's change that. Let's at least, like, improve that. And so I was like, I can afford that.
Yeah.
I can buy one big burlap bag of coffee and just break it down and, package it up and sell it. And I did that from 2013, basically. And we still do it to today, but until the 2016. And in that time, I would basically, if there was, like, a festival, if there was a soccer tournament, something like that, anywhere in the US or Canada, I'm going. And so I would, like, move my coffee to, to Atlanta or to Toronto or wherever, and or volunteer park here in Seattle, and I'd, have a tent, and I'd sell green coffee to the community. And it didn't make a lot of money, but it was like I wanted to at least put effort inside of it. So moving fast forward a little bit with that, I'm getting my coffee out, and it's in a small, I'm pretty much losing money doing it, like maybe breaking even for the most part.
Right.
But at least I'm working on my crazy dream.
Right.
That's all that mattered to me.
Right.
At least I'm working on my crazy dream. And, I still, like, I was like, yo, like, if I can work through these hard times now, maybe, it'll see good, eventually, like, it's just going to keep planting a seed. Now, I'll be honest, like, at the same time, I was definitely putting a lot of pressure on myself.
Yeah.
saying like, why haven't you gotten there? You got to get there, you know?
Yeah.
So a lot of stress. A lot of these gray hairs now are a result of that time.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, why aren't you at your cafe yet? So basically, for 7 years, all I did was sell green coffee, a little bit of roasted coffee, but it was all with the intent.
7 years.
7 years.
Yeah.
So a lot of people didn't know me unless they knew my green coffee, and so for 7 years, it was pretty much just that. And then finally 2018 comes, and I'm like, all right, I think I got a little bit enough to be able to open up a space. And so I found a location. It was big enough for the things that I wanted. And what were those things? Those things were, I wanted to be able to source my own coffee, so I brought in my own coffee. I wanted to roast my own coffee, so I bought my own coffee roaster. I wanted to have my own espresso bar, so I could make my own coffee. And then I wanted to have the traditional coffee ceremony as well, so I can showcase and, you know, teach people about the traditional coffee ceremony as well. If you haven't gotten to experience it, like, what is it like? And so I wanted to have all those things inside of this space. And that none of it was like an option. All of it had to be in there. And so it took a little bit more than just like a cafe. It was like, yo, like, I'm wanting to kind of control the whole entire system associated to coffee, you know, from buying it, who I buy it from. So if I want to buy it from Simon, I'm going to buy it from you. And then I can roast it to the level that I think is going to be best for it, and then serve it like, you know, like espresso, lattes, all those things. And then really try kind of taking kind of full control of the whole process. And so that was my goal. And by January 2019, we saw it come to life, which was our first location in Renton. And, you know, we were fortunate enough to work with a very talented artist. His name's Yegi Michael,
I know Yegi.
Yeah, Yegi's incredible. And Yegi, you know, I by chance, I told him, I saw him, and I knew Yegi growing up. You know, he's always been kind of like a big brother for us, you know, and so very talented, obviously. And I was like, yeah, man, I'm getting ready to open up this cafe and roastery and stuff. He's like, oh, really? Where's it at? I was like, oh, it's going to be in Renton. He's like, really? Okay. He was like, when are you opening it? I was like, you know, trying to figure that out. But, you know, do you have any kind of ideas as to what you're wanting to do in this space? I was like, nah, man, at least like from a style, I don't have no clue. And he was like, all right, well, let me come over there. I was like, all right, when do you want to come through? Let me come through now. I was like, all right, let's go. And so he comes in and he was like, yo, what are you thinking about with this wall? What are you thinking about with paint and colors and stuff like that? And I'll be like, yeah, man, I'll be honest with you. My mind doesn't look like that. Like, it doesn't think that way. I appreciate it. I love art. You know, I love it, but I'm not, it's not a skill that I've got, or that piece of that DNA isn't in my makeup, you know? And so he was like, oh, well, I can see these, you know, colors, this brown, this art right here, a mural with wood and this and that. And so he helped me kind of really like
bring it to life
as like a look and feel. I could think of all the technical things, you know, but honestly, if it was like white walls, white tables and chairs, I could have been like, okay, that's it, you know. But he really gave it the warmth. And so that's kind of how, from, you know, 2011 to January 2019, really, that journey happened. And I mean, I kept working my full-time job. I even started my master's program because I just felt like I really want to be prepared for opening up this business. And I don't have the luxury to fail. I don't have the luxury to fail. I have to go hard. And so, yeah, that's how it all kind of like came to be. But man, it was a journey. It was definitely a journey.
Man, I can relate a lot to your journey, and I just love how art is a big part of it, you know, because coffee itself is art, you know. You know, a lot of Seattle artists are also from Ethiopia and Eritrea and East Africa, that region. In fact, Yegi is a celebrated artist in Kenya too. I don't know if you know that.
Really? Wow. Of course. I wouldn't be surprised though.
There's a big mural that he did.
Wow.
I think he was a refugee in Kenya.
Oh yeah, he was.
Yeah. So there was a painting competition, and so he participated in that, and then I think he got a contract to do one of the biggest murals in Kenya at the Kenya College of Kenya. It's either Utalii College, like one of these big colleges.
Yeah.
Even if you go there today, there's a big wall with a painting that he did. You know,
I'm not surprised, man. He is talented. He's talented. Such a visionary. Yeah, very fortunate to have a good brother like that, man.
Yeah, I mean, so when you think about your journey, so how many locations do you have?
We now have 4 locations.
4 locations.
Yeah, 4 of our own locations, and one is the Renton is our home base.
Yeah.
We opened up one in Capitol Hill, which is kind of like closer to downtown Seattle, and then we opened up in the U District near University of Washington, and then about a month ago we opened up inside of Microsoft, so in Redmond, and those ones are the 4 that we have our own, and then we have some branded ones that are inside of different places as well, where they're branded Boon Boona, and we provide all the coffee and stuff like that for them.
But they're different. You're franchising basically.
To an extent,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's light franchise type of thing where we go in, we provide training and education, provide coffee and everything, and that whole look and feel to an extent is Boon Boona, but it's in like Fred Hutch or Gates Foundation or Amazon and stuff like that. So there are these places like that, and to an extent is franchise, but not really, almost too.
Yeah,
that's kind of weird.
I love it. I love it because at the end of the day, all of it is a marketing strategy.
Yeah, it does help for sure.
Yeah, it's a people don't really appreciate. People don't appreciate what they don't see.
Yeah.
For example, a lot of the work you did, the 7 years, was planting this seed and ensuring that, when you're planting a seed, before people see the stem and the branches and the fruits, they don't know what is growing.
Yeah.
But under the ground, the roots are penetrating the soil and getting all the nutrients they need, and then boom, one day people begin seeing Boon Boona, the fruit. But also people's minds, and I'm speaking because I can relate with the growth of Boon Boona and align it with the growth of Madaraka Festival as a brand, and I feel that as people begin seeing you in different spaces, then they begin building trust with your brand. They begin telling your story. They begin recommending that, hey, if we are meeting, there's actually a Zambian friend of mine that I was meeting in the Central District, and he was like, we have to meet at Boon Boona.
Oh, wow. That's so nice, man.
Yeah, so it was random, and then I went there and I was really... I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
I was really proud. I was surprised at how clean everything was, how proper everything was. Every day you walk into any Boon Boona location, do you still have this feeling that, man, I can't believe that I made this happen?
Oh, every day. Yeah, every day. I mean, yeah, I definitely feel that way. A very sense of gratitude for sure, where it's like I'm amazed by it, and it's also a moment where I also kind of get like, I think about like how much I need to thank people for it, because I mean, I know it's not because I'm, once again, I don't believe it's all me.
100%.
Yeah, I don't believe it's all me. I think that been very fortunate. My family and my friends have been very supportive. The community has come out and supported, and I think that without it, when I go in, I definitely feel this like, man, overwhelming like gratitude to the people that have been a part of this journey. And I usually talk about Boon Boona as like we, because along the journey has been many that have helped.
So many, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think about the Tawak al-Tabarak, if they didn't let me have my coffee on their shelves, back in 2013,
right,
I wouldn't be here.
Right.
If they didn't test me on pricing and quality, then I wouldn't be here.
Right.
If even to an extent, the building owner, he could have had, another bigger coffee roaster inside there, a cafe inside there, but, he was okay with, this guy who's trying to figure it out, be there. So of course, like, there's a sense of gratitude, to even the landlord, for the opportunity. So you just think
to
about
take a risk,
to take a risk, and you
Yeah.
think about all those players, everybody that's been involved, and so I do, like, I am like, wow, maybe you could say, this was a crazy vision that you had, but none of it would have materialized without the many people that
Yeah.
were involved in. So then I get to a place of like, man, I'm fortunate to have these people, you know, to have
Believe
you.
in you.
Yeah,
Believe
yeah.
in you, and to even say that he can do it. You know.
Yeah, yeah.
So the other thing, there's so many things about you that I really appreciate. You know, you're not interested in competing with anyone. You're on a journey.
Yeah.
You're on a journey to honor a lot of brothers and sisters that could do the same thing you're doing
For
and do
sure.
it even better. But because
Yeah.
they're in different places, for me, that's important.
Yeah,
I think that's
yeah.
revolutionary.
Yeah.
And then to dream about something and to make it happen in Seattle is very unique. The reason why it's very unique is because as an entrepreneur in Seattle, especially somebody from our background, immigrants living in this country, it's hard for you to access capital,
Yeah.
to access enough people that believe in you, to access enough landlords that want to do business with you,
Yeah.
you know. So I just want to, for a moment, reflect on just the value of, just the value of not just community, but the value of doing things that actually bring community to your business, you know. And I feel like events, you can't avoid doing events, you know.
Yeah.
When you're opening a new location, you have to do an event.
Yeah.
When you are, when you are launching a new product, you have to do an event. But I want us to pause there for a second.
Yeah.
and actually talk about the pressure of running a business in Seattle, where, of course, since it's coffee, Starbucks was founded here.
Yeah.
But then Boeing was also founded here.
Yeah.
Amazon was founded here. And when you think about Boon Boona, many people see that this is a Seattle brand, you know, where is it going to go? Do you feel some form of a pressure, pressure as the founder and leader of this organization that, wow, I'm in a place where things become global brands?
No, I don't think of it in that manner.
Yeah.
And I say that it's kind of a few of those things that you kind of just spoke to right now, that are all coming together, right? So, for example, had I not received the opportunity to place my product in a store like Tawakkal Tabarak, and I keep mentioning them because truly, like, they were very, very, they're the biggest stores that we have in our community, So if you want spices, you want meat, you're going to those stores, that's at least how I grew up in South Seattle. Like, that's what we would go to. So to have my product on their shelves, they provided me a huge opportunity. I knew that I needed to provide opportunity for my community if I ever had an opportunity. Like, if I've got a space, I need to be able to get my community inside there. That's a must. That's a responsibility I have. So that's first thing. Second, I also believe in a collaborative nature for things in business to help everybody succeed. Because I don't believe that, we need to go at each other or concerned that, that person, that block, that's that person, and then this block is mine, this spot is, no. I don't think. I think that everybody has different experiences when they go into different places, and there's a reason why you go to one place versus another place. You want to try something different. You want to experience that thing again, or whatever the case may be. But as a community, if you think about in just something that's, let's just take coffee, right? How many people drink coffee, right? It's billions.
So many, yeah.
So why worry about something that is such a part of our consumption, whether it's something that we do in the morning or it's a cultural thing that we have all the time, or it's something that we need to keep up for caffeine, and whatever the case may be for your reason to go to it. So many people are consuming it. Okay, that's great. So then I have no reason to think about it in that manner. I could think about how do I provide an experience? What am I doing that's different? How am I going to be intentional? Is those factors that are important to me. So kind of speeding up a little bit to the question you ask about big brands, starting here and growing, do I feel pressured? The reason why I don't feel the pressure is because I know that at the fundamentals of it, I need to do the things that I set out to do back in 2011, 2012. So what are those things? Sourcing. I need to continue sourcing from Africa. I want to source better. If I have the means to buy more, if I have the means to buy, We just started, like, first it was primarily just Ethiopia and Rwanda we were buying from. Now it's Kenya, it's Tanzania, it's Uganda, it's Congo, Malawi. We bought our first Cameroonian coffee like 2 years ago. We've been buying more and more of it every year. So if I get to be like a pioneer in the space of like finding new coffee farms and producers to work with because we just focus on Africa, man, I love that. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's powerful to me. That's a lot of joy I find in that. I find so much satisfaction, more than the financial gain. So that's one. The second part is also the supply chain associated to it. So that's also important, that it's not just going to large conglomerates that are moving it, but that there's people in the process. So our Burundi's coffee, we buy only from Burundi, but people there, but then also the person that moves it, brings it all the way here, is a Burundi descent. Similar to Ethiopia, things like that. These are how we kind of look at it. So how do you improve that supply chain? So that's the first one. So I want to be able to deliver on that. Got to continue to and improve that. The second one is, our spaces. How do you provide opportunities for others? So whether it is art, whether it is live music, whether it is another small business, who even maybe one day trying to open up another cafe, provide them the space to do so. If they're trying to start it off by selling sambusas, okay, provide them a space. What is it going to hurt? You've got the space, go ahead. If you have the space, why not? And it provides the opportunity to amplify them, provide more people of an experience who come into Boon Boona, like, try something different. So it gives that opportunity. It also fulfills the thing that I knew I needed to as well, which is that responsibility of like providing opportunity in my spaces. And it also goes to education too. So we do look at things like, right now we work with the library, who every month, they come in twice a month. One time they're teaching in English and they're doing like singing songs and reading books to kids. And then the next week they're coming in and doing it now in Tigrinya and Amharic. So they're teaching kids in English and Amharic and Tigrinya as well. So that feels good.
Yeah.
That feels good.
Yeah.
I'm satisfied with those things. The other piece is, what are we doing outside of our cafe too? How are we engaging in the community? What is there that needs to be done, or how do we get involved? What do we support? Even if, we're not that big. Like, I'll be honest, we're not that big. But if our intention is to just do even small incremental things, even if it is sharing on social media or telling people about this organization who's doing great work, that's plenty for us too. Like, that's helping. So I do think about things like that as well. So that's another piece of the business that is very important. And the last one, which is, obviously very important, is having good coffee. Like, I'm serious about our coffee. We spend time on tasting and trying to have, great representation of these incredible coffees. The hardest part is producing it. And so the producers on the ground in all these countries are producing this incredible product. It's our job to shine it, polish it up, make it ready, and have it available for you to try in an espresso or latte and stuff like that. But that we take very seriously, and we've been recognized for that. So unless I satisfy these four things, the desire to expand or grow is not there. If I can't fulfill those things as I continue to pursue, there's no point of doing it. And so for us, the core is that, can you continue to deliver on the things that you wanted to do? Is it going to help you get closer to that goal? If so, then you continue to move forward. If that's where it's at, if I only end up with 4 cafes and we're just here in Washington State, hey, I'm grateful for that too. But the objective is satisfying those principles, because that's what is really the most satisfying thing for me. It's not the financial gain. Yes, you got to make a living, but can you do it while also doing these things? Yes, you can. And that's kind of the selfish thing that I'm trying to prove that you can have a socially conscious for-profit business, and then, of course I'm gonna mess up, we're gonna learn, but we're gonna try. That's it.
I love it. Man, listen, for a long time, maybe the last 3 weeks, we've been talking about collaborating.
Yeah.
And so I'm just going to share what the idea is, because you've touched on it already. So, Madaraka Festival, this is our 10-year anniversary.
It's beautiful. It's incredible.
Thank you. And it's part of why we rebranded my original podcast, African Father in America podcast, to Madaraka Festival podcast, so that I can put all the energy towards what my focus is.
Right.
And so we bring African artists from across Africa, but mainly East Africa.
Yeah.
Because East African music has been put on the side for a long time, and it's Afrobeat that is really like the only African genre, you know. So Madaraka Festival brings Jamaicans to Seattle. So for the first 8 years, we were just in Seattle. And during that time, I was learning how to do events. You know, I started producing events in Kenya. The very first event I did was in high school. It was a Christmas Eve celebration in my mother's backyard. And then in 2008, after the post-election violence, you know, that year after the elections, people went into basically war, you know.
Yeah.
And so I was a DJ at the time, and so I organized an event called Unite the People Concert to bring people that were literally killing each other together, because everybody loves reggae, you know. So we organized a big reggae concert, and we brought the biggest DJs in the country to my hometown.
Wow.
And so the experience of seeing that these people are killing each other, chasing each other around with machetes. And then, like, suddenly they hear reggae and they're like, okay, let's
put it down.
Yeah. So for me, not only seeing that, but also seeing that we made money, and we took the money from this event and bought food for kids that were starving, because a lot of stores were closed, a lot of business people ran out of town, their stores were burnt to the ground, you know, because they were from a different tribe. You know? So seeing that made me so passionate. And, you know, more than the work I was doing, building schools and orphanages, I was employed by an NGO. So being a hustler from a very young age, I always thought of how do I do more of this, more of this kind of event that brings peace in the community, makes people happy, and gives me some money.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and so I realized that a lot of people that are involved in organizing the event were the same youths that were beating and killing each other. But just by telling them, hey, if you put out these posters in the community for me, I'll pay you this money. Then they leave the machete. The next thing is give them a camera and teach them, okay, I want videos for all the events I do. Can you learn how to do this? They'll, I can do it, you know.
Of course,
So I quickly created an ecosystem where people wanted to learn different skills, but these skills would replace some things that they were doing that were harmful to the community. So when I moved to Seattle, I wanted to do the same thing, but I had to do a lot of 9-to-5s, different kinds of things, before eventually... you know, it took me 8 years to then realize that Madaraka Festival is actually needed across the country. And now we are on a journey of the next 3 years. We want to make Madaraka Festival an official FIFA World Cup festival.
Let's go. That's powerful.
You know,
So
last year we reached 25,000 people across 6 cities.
Wow.
You know, so this year, as we celebrate 10 years, one of my ambitions has been to bring coffees from the different regions where we bring artists. Because artists are the biggest influencers today. You know, if Sauti Sol, the biggest artist they are the best boy band in Africa. If they were to say, we are in Seattle and we are here at Boon Boona drinking Boon Boona Coffee, a Kenyan in Everett will feel that coffee differently. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
If Rocky Dauni from Ghana says, oh, I'm in LA and I just bought my first Boon Boona bag of coffee from Madaraka Festival, you know what I mean? So when we were touring the country last year, we were selling merch, shirts and this you know, hoodie that I'm wearing, amongst other things. But I just feel like it wasn't enough. It's not enough to sell people things that they wear. Other people just want coffee from Africa. There are people that come to our events that are not Africans. In fact, 35% of our audience are Caucasians, 6% are Asians, about 5% are Latinos, and then majority are Africans and African Americans. But if we had our own coffee, Madaraka Coffee blend, and we were able to sell it during this year, we are touring 13 cities 3 times.
Wow.
So we are doing almost 50 shows across the country.
That's incredible.
We'll reach about 150,000 people.
Wow.
In person, and about 50 million people digitally. You know? We'll be creating a lot of content.
Look at what you guys have built. It's
I
incredible,
know,
man.
I know. We are still building it.
Yeah, of course.
So, my one of my biggest goals this year is to have a product at these events.
Yeah.
A coffee product that is from the countries where the headliners are coming from.
Yeah.
So that we can show something from where they come from.
Yeah, for
You
sure.
know what I mean?
Yeah, without a doubt.
What do you think about this idea?
I love the idea. Sign us up for it.
Well,
You know, it's a that's how we love. That's how we love it. It's organic, you know, like and it's a natural way. Yeah. We want to support Madaraka. We want to support you. We want to support the entire team and the journey. And if for me as well, like if there's a cause as well that we can support to along it, then I'm even happier too. So I'm for it. I'm ready to give and take part. We have. I mean, I probably say we probably have, depending on the timing, we have maybe at least a good 5 countries available at a time. Represented with different coffees, and then but throughout the year maybe about up to 10 maybe. So we may not have all the artists' country.
we definitely
but we'd have a good amount that we can play with too. So
I mean, I feel like we need to blend whatever coffees you have and make a Madaraka coffee blend and try it this year.
Okay.
And then if this year works well, we commit to the next 3 years so that we have this coffee available at the World Cup games.
Let's go.
FIFA just doubled the number of African teams playing in the World Cup. Did you know that?
Yeah. I heard that. Yeah, that's incredible. Let's go.
From 8 to 16 teams.
That's incredible. Yeah, let's go.
We will have hundreds of thousands of Africans coming here. They need to drink our coffee.
They definitely need to.
Anyway, man.
Sign me up for it. I'm happy to support.
Thank you.
I'm happy to support. I want it. I mean, what you're on, this mission that you're on, this journey that you're on, I want to see it only continue to grow. I want to see this podcast grow, the community grow behind it as well. But I just want to see you continue to in all beautiful and good things, continue to elevate all of us, brother. So, I'm happy to support.
Thank you. So, one thing I have a lot of, we have a similarity in terms of collaboration. Yeah. My producer is from Botswana.
Oh,
Jonathan.
nice, yeah.
When we first connected, I didn't even know that he makes films. Then one day he sent me it wasn't a music video. He was experimenting with a short film. And I watched it and I said, this guy is extremely talented. We need to do something. And so we began, considering having him produce this podcast for me. And then eventually we just became friends.
Yeah.
And now I feel like we are building something. And for me, collaboration is not about keeping someone. It's about just trying something together and seeing if it's possible. And if it enables you guys to stay together forever, similar to marriage, collaboration is like marriage, And I feel like one of the things that we as Africans in the diaspora and also back home don't do now, that our founders, the founders of the current Africa, people like Kwame Nkrumah, Kwame Nkrumah bought a house in London, where any African who wanted to do something in Africa could go and seek help, and they could find a way to support you. If you didn't have shelter, you could go there and stay, It was a Kenyan that they hired to run that place.
The program,
for them in London.
Wow.
And these stories are many. Mandela went to Ethiopia for training so that he could be a militant before he went and fought for freedom in South Africa. And I don't see a lot of that in our community today. I think a lot of us have become too competitive, too insecure, and too afraid to open up. Earlier on, I was talking to my biggest competitor, who is Nigerian, when it comes to producing events in the US. And actually in the entire African diaspora outside of Africa, currently there are only 2 people who produce serious events. One is a Nigerian, his name is Duke. He brings Burna Boy to the US. He brings like the biggest African names to the US. And then me. So I reached out to him, and I always just I take his content and I share it. Because I want him to succeed. Because as he succeeds, we are succeeding too. The same audience that goes to his events, like 25% are Kenyans, you know. So when I see them there and they see that I'm pushing this event that they will go to, he already pushes Madaraka to, he comments, he likes our posts. And then CNN featured him and I and a different group in Nigeria on a 30-minute story about live music production. So I ended up reaching out to him and asking him, look, we need to collaborate. We need to be intentional this year. And so I got off a Zoom meeting before this recording session where we were discussing how do we do this in a more intentional way, you know. And for me, I want to see more of that, you know. And just spending this time with you today has given me a lot of hope in that regard, you know. It really motivates me to continue pushing. So I know we've been here for a long time, but I want to have you again. I want to have you again, you know. I want to have you again for the show. I want you to identify some other brothers and sisters that I could have on the show. You know?
Happily.
But I want you to take a minute and look at that camera and just say your name. And then ask whoever is watching to subscribe to the Madaraka Festival podcast.
My name is Efrem Fesaha, CEO and founder of Boon Boona Coffee. If you haven't already, sign up, subscribe for the Madaraka Podcast.
Excellent. So as we close, I want you to think about 3 tips. You know, I know you produce a lot of events for Boon Boona, and events similar to the conversation we were having before we went on, before we pressed record. We were talking about marriage and how weddings are such a cumbersome process, and it's an event when you think about it.
It is.
Funerals are events. You know. Church functions, no matter the denomination or religion, they're simply events. They have a timeline, they have a budget, and you have to get people there, and the experience people have needs to bring them back again. You know what I mean? And so speak just 3 tips to those who are watching, who are interested in just learning what successful events look like in your own opinion.
For successful events, you know, I would say that, you know, an overall theme kind of for what it is that you're trying to accomplish. You know, so, you know, Madaraka, right? You guys are known for incredible music, incredible artists. So for Boon Boona as a cafe, you know, what spaces are we filling? You know, so you kind of want to know your desire, what it is that you're trying to accomplish. So for me, you know, I get kind of selfish about it with it. And so I'm like, you know, I want to support other small businesses with food and beverage, because my hope is that maybe, you know, it becomes a way for them to be able to step into an experience where, you know, they get to try out producing food or producing a beverage that community can taste, experience, maybe dial in their recipe. They like it, it works out, it goes well, it sells, many people buy their stuff, they sell out, whatever the case may be on that day. But then it becomes an opportunity for them to learn so that they can refine, so that they don't have to take as big of a risk, you know, with opening up a space and not being ready. But then the hope is that you provide them that space and that opportunity, and over time, hopefully it doesn't take too long, that they do open up a spot, and preferably something in the neighborhood where I'm at, because I wanna go eat their food and see that community grow. So I do think about it from like a food perspective, food and beverage. I think about like providing the space, allowing them to test out their recipes, making sure that they also have the things in the background, right? That they have their license, that their the food production space is a licensed place for it to happen, and the importance of kind of having those fundamental things kind of like set and established. So that's one component. And then the other side is then you know, I look at education as well. And so, you know, whether it's an author, whether it's art, whether it's live music, those things, you know, so we kind of like to bundle it up like that. And so I want, at least for the event side, we want to be known for what you can probably receive at Boon Boona is going to be like along those lines. So when you see an event come up, it's like, oh, okay, hopefully it's enriching. What we try saying is that we want to provide a positive experience for our community, and so it could be in those fashions, is what we look. Another side to it is that I think that, something that we're still working on, but is a very clear process for what that space is going to be. What on that day of that event, how is it you're going to be able to amplify everything? How are you going to bring it all together? How are you going to, what are you going to do within that space? When they come in, what's that first experience that they're going to have? Are they going to be greeted by someone? Or are they going to be, they just coming up to the point of sale and starting to see? Or is it they're just walking around this empty, open space? Or they're sitting at table? What is that experience going to be? And really evaluating it from your point of view as a person going in, literally walking into a space and saying, okay, what is the feeling that you want to get when you go into there? And so thinking about the ambiance, thinking about the music, thinking about the experience of that guest is really important. So you want to think about all those components. And so, we just celebrated our 5th year anniversary of having our Renton location. And so we were like, okay, hey, we're going to have a DJ. So we had Lace Cadence
wow.
come in, and a good brother does incredible music. So he came in and he played for us, DJed the entire evening. We had also, we were fortunate enough to work with 5 different breweries, so beer companies in the region, who use our coffee into their beer. And so they all have different beer coffee things that they've done, which is, it's a fun way of doing it. And if you like beer, it's a really kind of interesting kind of taste profile or whatnot. And so all 5 of them, we're very fortunate that, we got that. But they all had released the beers or had the beers available at the same time. So we said, let's highlight those 5 breweries. So that's another thing. I want to highlight somebody else. It doesn't need to all be about us. So who are we going to highlight? We're going to highlight this other Métier. We're going to highlight Holy Mountain, all these other breweries, other businesses in the neighborhood. So we're thinking about that 5 year. You're thinking about, okay, you got music, you've got, you've got drinks, you've got, maybe some food, and you got space. And who's going to be in that space? Who are you inviting into that space? Kind of okay, so is it going to be open to the whole community? Is it going to be folks in your industry? What's it going to look like? Because then it caters to what you want to have for them as an experience, right? Because if they do know each other a little bit, it's an opportunity for them to connect. They can have the music playing and everything. But in short, right, is what kind of experience do you want that person to have going into that space? And thinking about those details is really key. The last piece I'd say is that, I think when it comes to events as well, it's about, getting the marketing out. And a lot of the times, especially for us, it's it's usually word of mouth, and so social media and things like that also, of course, they play a certain level. But I think if I'm not hearing it directly from you, I'm going to this thing tonight, then I think that the word of mouth is super strong.
It's so strong.
So I think that, whoever is hosting, is important that they're not just putting it on social media or on a website. It's actually talking to people and being yo, next week we got this event, come through, and it's really pumping it to each person, be yo, you don't want to miss it, we got this and this and that. And I know it's not scalable, but it does spread, and it's much more, the results are there. The results are there. When I tell you, you're going to tell somebody else. And if you're excited about, what's going to be the experience, what the potential experience is going to be, if I just tell you oh, we're going to have this and this and that, then you're going to be even more okay, that's where I want to be at. And Friday, that's perfect. I'm completely free. Or you know what? I have that thing. I'm changing it because I really want to be there. So I think the power of word of mouth is really something that can't be forgotten or overlooked, because I think it truly does have a lot more power than social media.
I love it, man. We should have an entire conversation just around events and branding. I could just keep you for the day.
I'd love to hang out for the day.
Yeah,
I'm not in a rush, man.
Yeah, man.
No rush.
A couple of things that I want to mention before we wrap up.
Yeah.
Number one is I want to thank you for making the time today. I know how much you deal with. So that's number one. Number two, way back a few years ago, you introduced me to the UW's business school.
Oh yeah.
And so the things that you're talking about in regards to collaboration and things like that, you've done them for a long time, and I just want to thank you for being generous with your connections. Many people don't even want to create the time, they don't even reply to your message, and I just want you to keep doing that. Keep doing that for other people. It will really make a difference.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I definitely love doing those things. I think it's too often there's a term gatekeeping or things like that.
Right.
And that's not there. Like, I mean, the desire is to provide, even if it's in, like, I'll be honest, like at least once a week, I'm having a meeting with somebody that's wanting to get into coffee. Like, they want to open up a cafe or they want to do something in coffee. It's like, great. It's like, I'd rather see more black and brown people in coffee than anybody else. So, kind of like Issa Rae said once, I'm rooting for anybody black. There's a lot of that where it's like, no, I want to see more of us in coffee. And that's an industry that I'm in,
Right.
I definitely do. And so that goes for anything else in any other area. If I have the knowledge or if I have the experience and I can share, like, I mean, I'm telling you, if I got like this much of wisdom, that's good enough, man. I'll share that. But I know I have very little, but whatever I do, I'm happy to try my best.
Excellent. Thank you, man. For those who are still here with us for today's episode, that I feel that has been the most incredible episode of the Madaraka Festival podcast.
Well, that's a high one. Yeah, that's a high mark.
Yeah, man. Yeah, we will have you back for sure. I just want to thank you all for staying with us and for supporting the Madaraka Festival podcast, and also for supporting Madaraka Festival itself. My goal is to bring you incredible leaders from our community, like Efrem, who is doing amazing work with Boon Boona Coffee. And again, I'll add the information about his coffee shop and the locations in the description of today's video. I want you to make sure you do me a few things. Number one, subscribe to the channel. And number two, I want you to give this video a thumbs up. Take great care of yourselves. Peace and love.